childhood, the farm and farming were part of my everyday life. My mom, siblings, and I would leave school, stop at home for a quick snack and a change of clothes, and head to the farm. My mother loves farming, and we loved going along with her. This also meant we got to interact more with our grandparents and observe their love and their passion for farming, and also their attachment to tiri, the word for soil in my language. From these interactions, I got to see the cycles of replanting and harvesting. When my grandmother harvested her crops, she would sort them out into 3 categories. Let's use maize, for example. She'd have maize for home use, maize for selling, and maize to be planted as seed. So coming from this background of very traditional farming, the announcement of the lifting of the GMO ban in Kenya, a very controversial topic due to the little factual information widely known, got me thinking. In light of this, let's get a few things straight. What are GMOs? The term GMO simply stands for genetically modified organism. But what exactly does this mean? This refers to any plants, animals, microorganisms, or any other organism whose genetic makeup has been modified in a lab using genetic engineering. Have we ever stopped for a moment to ask ourselves, what is their purpose? Why change the natural makeup of organisms? To increase their tolerance to environmental stresses caused by things like climate change, such as the lack of water or the rises in temperature, to increase resistance to pests and diseases and chemical treatments, to increase food supply with longer shelf life, higher nutritional value, and at lower costs, for medicinal reasons, such as the making of vaccines, and to increase the rate of growth of plants and animals. Being in a developing country, all of this sounds like really good news. More food, larger supply, everybody gets their ugali, and a bit more money in my pocket. But hold on. Is this too good to be true? Is this another case of not everything that glitters is gold? As with all things, GMOs have their impacts. An impact that is not as widely discussed is that on the small-scale farmer, and by association, the genetic diversity of our crops. Armed with insufficient information on how to implement GM crop technologies, the pros and the cons of GM crop farming, the accessibility and availability of GM crop seeds, and the cycles of harvest, the potential of GM crop farming benefiting that small-scale farmer is reduced significantly. GMOs curtail the harvest cycle that many small-scale farmers, like my grandmother, rely on. The storage and replanting methods used are redundant. Let me explain with a bit of a story. I used to take my mom to the farmer's market to buy seeds, despite the fact that we already had crops growing on the farm. She would store these seeds for about a year or 2 to plant them when the weather was most favorable for the highest yield, especially when she anticipated to harvest when the crop was out of season. GM crops are engineered with something known as the terminator gene. This renders the harvest sterile, as well as the seed after a certain period of time. So the traditional farmer who supplies seeds for replanting is out of business because his seeds will not germinate or produce such a very low yield. This also gets rid of our genetic diversity of crops. It's not all doom and gloom. Remember, GMOs do have their benefits, especially to that large-scale farmer with lots of land and heavier pockets. But this small-scale farmer now has an added cost to their stringent budget: the constant purchase of GMO seeds, which, by the way, are more expensive. This is brought to light better by Azadi and others in the article of GMOs and the small-scale farmer. They write, and I quote, "Most GM crop technologies are developed in these companies long before public awareness and funding, and are thereby focused on the traits that are of value to the large-scale farmer who is willing to pay. Hence, these companies are hesitant to invest in the crops that seem to be convenient to fragile small-scale farming systems of the developing world due to the farmer's inability to pay for GM seed price premiums. Additionally, According to the UNFAO, United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, 75% of plant genetic diversity has been lost since the 1990s. In the article on agrobiology, they explain that this is due to the replacement of conventional varieties by exotic and improved varieties and species, as farmers worldwide shift from conventional seed to GM crops. Let's circle back to seed storage. In this generation, especially in the developed world, there is a lack of awareness of how farmers are intertwined with Tiri and their land. It is not just mere farming, it is life. It is their connection to the past and a bridge to the future. Seed breeding is just one of the many benefits of the ecological knowledge possessed by these farmers, despite their lack of certified education. The act of storing seeds was an art in itself. The farmer would select the choice crop that would become seed. This would be dried under the scorching sun to ensure no moisture was left behind to spoil the crop. It would then be stored in a special place in the granary. The granary was built specifically for seed storage. In some cultures, like my own, it would be cleansed with the smoke of the leleshwa tree leaf to ward away any pests or insects that found their way inside. It was lifted about the soil with tins surrounding each leg to ensure no mice or rats got into the seed haven. It was much like this one, but my great-grandmother's was made with straw and cemented with cow dung. This art ensured that more seeds were there to be planted the following year. It also meant that the small-scale farmer was reliant on themselves. The introduction of GMOs disconnects the small-scale farmer from this generational gift as they become more reliant on multinational seed companies every time they wish to plant their crops. So in retrospect, is the introduction of GMOs a disadvantage to the small-scale farmer in favor of the wealthier, more able farmers? Has the common man, who depends on his crop to feed himself and his family, been left holding the short straw once again? Rather than taking one big leap into adopting GMOs in Kenya as a quick fix to our food insecurity, we should be cautious and take small steps into implementing this scientific innovation. Let us cultivate GMOs through large-scale farming systems while preserving the conventional and indigenous food systems that have served us so well for so many years. Let us preserve genetic diversity for our future generations while minimizing the negative effect of GMOs on small-scale farmers. Thank you.